It is the Anfield Wrap. Neil Atkinson joined by Ian Ryan, Josh Williams and Rob Gutmann after the last game managed by Jurgen Klopp of Liverpool Football Club there yesterday. A 2-0 straightforward enough victory over Wolverhampton Wanderers, but it was a hugely emotional day and we will be getting into all of that. But all the way through the season, we've been sponsored by Green King Sport, where football is more than a game. There's not much of the club season left. There's a big Euros and there's 900 Green King Sports clubs dotted around the country for the Euros. You've got the playoff finals to come as well in there too. You've also got the FA Cup final, the Champions League final, the Europa League final and the Conference League final to look forward to, and you will be within walking distance of your local Green King. Football is much more fun with people. We will always say that because it helps. It is true, and Jurgen Klopp says it all the time as well, and he's right about it too. So all that stuff is to come. If you get the app, that's there as well. There's competitions, discounts, and they have on their social channels lots of interesting content, and hopefully we'll be able to contribute to some of that coming up. We are going to start with the big goodbye. I am made up. When I didn't really check who I had today until this morning, and as I lay in bed I had a look who was on the show, and I don't mean any disrespect to Rob Gutmann, to the wonderful Ian Ryan and the wonderful book writer Josh Williams, but I was delighted I had you. And the reason why I was delighted I had you was because Jurgen Klopp's valedictory speech was almost tailored for you, my good friend. It was not one of the and hasn't it all been wonderful and etc etc. Jurgen Klopp is all about tomorrow, and you are the man I know who lives most of his life at some unspecified future point somewhere in the next 3 months. That is where you exist. Never in the now, never in the past, never in the distant future, but in the near future. And Jurgen Klopp and Rob Gutmann are aligned that Liverpool's near future needs to be strong, and that was what Jurgen wants to get over there yesterday.
Yeah, I'm all about where my next buzz is coming from. And I think that's what Jurgen was trying to say in a roundabout sort of way. Yeah, he's a facing forward kind of guy, and I try to be that way too. Maybe he's taught me something along this journey. No, I thought... I was, everyone goes, I was dreading that final day, and even Klopp, I imagine, was sort of saying that's going to be a really hard day. I was dreading it because I thought, I don't want anybody forcing me to think a certain way. It is what it is, But it was emotional. I couldn't, we've talked. Did you cry? Did you cry? How much did you cry? Everyone's sort of thrusting that question at each other. I feel my face is aching today through trying not to cry, basically. Trying to be stoic in front of my two lads.
Is that what you were trying to really show stoicism? Is that what you were about yesterday?
Yeah.
I don't think Jurgen Klopp would approve of that, though. I mean, I've just talked you up there, and look at you already knocking me over. I wasn't going to be
emotional. But it was very, very emotional. But I loved the facing forward thing. The him talking about it's not the end, it's a beginning. I thought, yeah, is right, Jurgen. I actually came away from it thinking, you could do stuff at funerals, You could this is actually the sort of talk we need at funerals. Go, you know what? You say they're dead, but in a way they're not. They're always with us. I sort of felt he was going a bit down that path, quite frankly. And I thought, yeah, you'd say it's not over, Jurgen, but quite like you to stay. I actually had a little fantasy driving into the car this morning thinking, imagine if in the midst of all that he goes, I have something really important to say. I'm staying 3 more years. I just imagine the roof would have come off. I think it would have just been the biggest explosion, just because we've been whipped up. He is like, yesterday you could see Jurgen. I know he's very authentic, but he's had a week of this nonsense, quite frankly. It's orgy of you're leaving around him. He couldn't quite be his authentic self yesterday. I felt he was performing in a good way, and I thought for the first time, you're like a charismatic preacher, but a good one. You could convince us of anything, and he could convince me there's life after death, and many have tried and failed with that one.
I mean, there we go. Went all over the place, Ian Ryan, but that's what we expected.
Well, didn't see the funeral track coming.
No, did I? No, the shite impression. There is.
Come on.
There is.
Ian.
Finally. Jurgen, he's a fan now. Maybe he's listening, and he's already switched off. We'll pack this in. There is with it, Ian. I think the facing forward stuff is so important, and I think it's worth. I think he's determined that, and I've long thought this, before it was even mooted, the idea of him going. I've long been of the view, as far as he's concerned, whether or not he succeeds is going to be as much about what comes next. And I think he all but explicitly says that yesterday, this thing that he's managed to rekindle with us properly, if it just sort of withers now on the vine, then in his mind, I think he'll view it as all not quite having been what he thought it was. I think he expects us to be authentic. He expects the club to be powerful. He expects the club to punch its weight in every single way, us to punch our weight in every single way, and that's the way in which it works. And I just think he was determined to say that yesterday, regardless of what poor Peter McDowell thought his questions were going to be.
Yeah, he handled it well, the manager. I agree with the boys. We were chatting off air before. He almost made it not that emotional. Like I didn't cry, and I think maybe if the manager got close to tears, maybe that's when it kind of kicks in around the ground and stuff. But when he was singing the Arne Slot song, I thought he was singing about himself. I was like, all right, yeah, I know you've done well, but fucking hell. You know what I mean? Get on me. It's like me when I fill the dishwasher up. It was but I thought, but obviously when I got home, I mean, I'd had a few pints to be fair, but when I got home, I realised obviously he was kind of talking about the new manager and stuff, and that's him to a T, really, isn't it? It's never always been about him. He is very much about the bigger picture and the collective and what we can do and what we can bring and stuff, and he got a real sense of that yesterday. And I think, the manager struck me as someone leading up to the game. Yes, he's sad, and he's incredibly sad, and he's had an unbelievable time here, and watching all the different videos and the stuff that the Wrap have done, but even his own stuff that he's put out recently, where he's jumped on Instagram and he's talking about the boxes and stuff, and it's obviously been an emotional ride, and it almost feels like you get to the point where he's done all the emotion. He's done that. That's parked now. That's in the box with all of his other stuff. And yesterday he held it together. He kept really calm. You'd almost got the impression that he wanted the backroom team to get a lot of the adulation as well, because they've been hugely important to what has gone on over his tenure. And it got referenced on the kind of post-match show, but I thought it was quite nice that maybe 150, 200 Wolves fans kind of stayed behind. I mean, they might have been regretting that when they realised how long the fucking thing was, and it was like, I'm going to clap all 7 of these boys before we get to Jurgen Klopp. I saw someone walk off just before Pep Linders, and I thought, lad, you've done the hard yards here. You must give it 5 more minutes. You know what I mean? The big man's coming out.
If you've come this far.
You know what I mean? You've done all 7. So I think the manager was very much about, let's praise the players, let's praise the team behind him who've helped get Liverpool to the pinnacle, and that's where we've been. We've been to the pinnacle. We've been to the very top, league title, European Cup. I said on the show leading up to the game to all the lads who were on that, would you have shook hands on that? And it was very much absolutely. If you're offering me the first league title after 30 years and a European Cup to boot, not to mention all the bits and pieces that surround it, League Cups, FA Cups, of course.
So many wins.
So many great seasons, so many moments, and he will talk about that, and people might try and play it down, and they can do what the fuck they want, but the people who've lived it and breathed it and been involved in it and walk the walk with the manager, they know what it's been like, they know what it's felt like, and that's the important bit. And yeah, listen, we send them off with our best, but it's been a hell of a 9 years.
We send him off with our best, Josh. I think that is the takeaway, and he very much wants to give his best back. I loved that he loves us to bits. I feel as though I wonder where he's picked that one up from, but I'm banging into it. He loves us to bits is the idea, and that is, it's reciprocated on such a scale. As far as it goes, there is with him, as I say, he's always got another point. He always turns up with his own agenda. I don't think it's necessarily quite as performative maybe as Rob did there, but I think he's got a really strong sense of, this is what I want to say, this is what I want to get over, and he is getting it over. He was relentless in it, really. I think he was, he wasn't even entertaining. What was your favourite game? What game would you like to relive? The line about, well, we'll go back and do one of the City draws. It was just cut that. I was thinking, genuinely, when the question came, I thought, well, he's going to say Barcelona here, and he just cuts it dead, because as far as he's concerned, he doesn't want you living in the past, and that's been the message all the way through. We create these memories. I don't know what he is himself going to enjoy them, but we create these memories together and look at them at a later point, because we've got to do this thing now. And for me, it was such a call to arms about the next thing, as I say, in a way that you'd have thought would have almost been practically impossible, given the fact that it's him after 9 years going. He even turns that into, let's make tomorrow as strong as possible.
Yeah. I think the speech was probably the most authentic part of the whole thing. It felt very, and I think this has been a recurring theme with Klopp throughout his career, really. He's very good at doing like the off the cuff, just one-liners that absolutely capture like a moment or whatever. It doesn't feel particularly, rehearse like he's done this in the mirror, previous days or something like that. It feels like he's speaking from the heart, and even despite that, in the moments, getting listened to by like 60,000 people, he still finds the right words, still gets the right message across, and makes us all feel really safe, almost really good about the future. It was an emotional week. It was an emotional day. I have wanted to cry just to feel a bit human, like, to be honest. After it, I looked at myself in the mirror and I was a bit like, "Are you that cold? Like after 9 years of
You're
this
a
man, you're not
monster,
crying."
Josh.
Stay to you, honestly.
But I think to be fair though, I think there was an element of the way it played out impacted that. It did feel very premeditated almost. Everything was a bit too planned for me. But I think when Klopp just basically grabbed the mic and just talked to us for about 10 minutes, that was for me the most meaningful part of it. And all the right messages were in there in terms of looking forward to the future and touching on the age of the squad and things like that. There's lots to look forward to. The new manager's coming in with that back and that support, and he's got all the ingredients there, unlike Klopp when Klopp first came in, to actually just immediately start rolling. You're not kind of like going backwards first to then move forward. You can just immediately start progressing straight away. So yeah, lots to look forward to. But it's still a sad loss, and I mean, we're going to miss the fella.
You're going to miss the fella, Josh. Back on this idea of the extent to which he's remarkably collaborative, I think, and it's mentioned there about the team that's around him, and he wanted to say goodbye to them and wanted to ensure that they had their moments as well, in conjunction with him. I think he's remarkably collaborative in that regard. I think you get to see that with the relationship with the players, that he gives so much of themselves, and he wants the best for all of these that came through, and all the stuff that came up before, even before the day. I think he's determined as part of that he feels as though, I genuinely almost could not be leaving it in a better place. I was thinking about it. There's two things that occurred to me, Josh. One was, imagine we'd have been going into that yesterday a point behind City.
I've thought this year.
I don't know anyone would have known what to do, and he certainly wouldn't have been able to do that at the end in the way in which he does, if that had been the way in which it had gone one more time. I was thinking about it, just thinking, imagine it. God, it'd be absolutely hectic. But also, imagine if he felt he was going and there was just a vacuum. Imagine if, for instance, the day he does the video, he says, "And that's me," if you know what I mean, there and then, like literally goes there and then. That I think he'll have looked at everything that's going on around. That he'll have a very really clear opinion, I think, about Slot. By now, he'll have gone and taken his own time to pull that together and do all of those bits and pieces. He'll have asked some questions. I think he genuinely does feel like, I'm going and this thing is in great nick. I think, because as I keep saying it, that's what he's seen as his job. I've got to make it better. I was in the ground looking at the stands. It just sort of occurred to me about 85 when everyone started singing, well, that wasn't there, and that wasn't there. All of that is, and it's not, he wasn't building them, he wasn't funding them, but he's kept this club where it needs to be whilst all that's been ongoing. And to me, I think he thinks, I could not be handed it. Genuinely, I think he thinks you couldn't be handed it over in any better nick.
Well, he is just the ultimate leader, and when it comes to what leadership is, he spoke about this in the past, dedicated like videos to it on YouTube and that you can watch, where like he's talking about mainly like the concept of leadership is looking at who's around you and empowering them to also be as great as you are, almost. And I think there was a moment where, after his speech, he kind of gets, I watched it back last night, and he kind of gets, encouraged, basically go and do a lap of the ground or something on your own, or go and embrace the Klopp on your own or something. And he like visibly shakes his head and says no, grabs the arms of his coaches and does it together as one unit almost. And I think that kind of just sums him up. And looking forward to the future, one thing he's definitely established, one thing he's reminded us of maybe is how powerful the club can be. Any club can be, really, if everyone's aligned from top to bottom, every department. That the fans recognising the team on the pitch and being able to relate to them and all that. And that's something we need to aim for in the future. That's like looking at the Feyenoord images as well. I felt really almost reassured that Slot had a similar send off. It felt like. It just felt right that that there was an element of like a family thing going on in Rotterdam, and Liverpool obviously feels like a very family club. So the fact that Slot is coming in and replacing Klopp, it just felt a bit right. And going back to what you just said there as well about the final day stuff, I mean, even if we led by a point, like, it would have been horrible, mate. Like, if we'd have lost that game, maybe, or something, like, I was half glad that there was nothing riding on the game, almost, just so that we could enjoy it and focus on what really matters, and that's the fact that we're losing one of our own, really. Above silverware and things like that, Klopp's going to outlast any silverware that we could have won this season. So, we were able to focus on that, and there's plenty to look forward to.
That leadership piece that Josh was talking about there, it struck me because when I was watching some of the bits leading up to the game, and there's been loads that the manager's done, which must have been quite exhausting, but there's that bit he does with Sky, and it's the Adam Lallana piece where Adam Lallana talks about when Klopp turned up, that he didn't feel comfortable at Liverpool, Adam Lallana. The weight of the shirt, the pressure, expectation, he didn't really want to be there. And he said the manager, without even realising it, took all that away. And I think that was a massive thing, that. I think the ability to lead and to do that and be your authentic self and almost problem solve without Lallana going to him saying, listen, boss, I can't handle this. It's too much. It's not right for me. But he took it all away. And I think the manager was able to do that, I think, for all of us in a way, that first press conference and stuff. But it was almost like, I know you're all dealing with this pressure and this weight of expectation to get a league title over the line. Don't worry about that. I'll take all that. I'll take all that stress, all that pressure, all that frustration, all that angst. That's mine now. That belongs to me. The message to the players was clear. Give me everything. Take on board the instruction. Play your heart out, and you'll get somewhere. And the message to the fans was equally clear. When we need you, when Anfield needs to be at its absolute best, bring it. Make sure you bring it. And we did that. We turned it into a cauldron. We turned it into a place where it was frightening for the opposition. And the manager talked about it yesterday. He called it a superpower. And people might mock that and laugh at that. But I bet you there's other managers in world football who were going, absolutely, it is a fucking superpower.
I'd like one of them.
That's exactly what it's like. When they need you most, they rise, they come to the table, they come to the party, and it is ferocious. And at times, that's helped get the team over the line. They've done their bit, of course they have. They've done more than their bit. But as one, we've kind of come together, and I think that's why it does feel special. And people, again, will mock at it and they'll say it's one league title in 9 years, all that stuff. But it's more than that. It's been more than that to us. And I think, yesterday felt poignant, it felt special. But the whole time, even when it's been not quite where you want it to be, you've always been able to see, actually, what's coming over the horizon here looks all right. We'll be absolutely fine under this guy. He will sort it, no doubt about it. And yeah, as far as leaders go, there's not many better about.
I think we are going to find out what kind of a vacuum he's left. He was right to focus on what assets we have. The assets we have are the playing staff he's left behind, their youth, their potential, the experience, their character, all those things we come to admire in Klopp footballers, and us, the people, the crowd. We between us and the players, we're the assets, us mainly. But there's no doubt there's a vacuum and a half going to be left. And if anything, this wonderful week we've shared with him really across all the myriad interviews and the sentimental pieces where he's watched players talk about him. And yesterday, it is a salutary reminder of the vacuum he will leave, because there is no other Jurgen Klopp. And I think for me, it's not just what we see, the public face. He's clearly been the glue that made this all work for quite a long time. And I think the ownership are going to have a real... I think they probably have sat down, and I think probably over the last few months, the reason we've seen the likes of Michael Edwards come back into play and this administrative, very experienced, skilled administrative structure suddenly put into place is because they realise he was gluing a lot of stuff together. And then now, who knows what we're actually left with. I'm encouraged what you say, Josh, about how Slot was perceived in Feyenoord. That's a good thing. I can't imagine, though. It's almost like, I don't know. This is a really bizarre analogy. I was reading a review of a West End play version of Fawlty Towers being put out. And I'm a big fan of Fawlty Towers, but you kind of think, you can't copy that. You can't put that in a 3D format on a stage and do a facsimile of it and it be as good as the original thing. And I don't quite know how I can't see it with Klopp. It's almost like, are we casting bald man as the bald version of Klopp? Is that what we're doing? Are we looking at him singing You'll Never Walk Alone? Are we looking at the love he had? We go, now you're going to be Klopp -3. And So
I think he's got to be empowered to be himself, and I think that's what the manager was trying to say. That he's got to be empowered to be himself.
This is what I'm getting at. We've always got to. There's got to be a phase. I mean, I don't know when they're going to announce Arne. Is it going to be this?
I think it's boxed off. To be honest, I mean, yeah. Do you mean like something on the website?
I mean the media stuff where he gives his first interview as a Liverpool manager. When they're going to do that? If I was,
they might just do it on Church Street. Him and Klopp, get a couple of microphones, a PA,
a couple of guys chatting. But I have to say, in all seriousness, if Arne's kept tabs of what's going on this week, he'd be going, "Fuck off, will you?" With all this,
do you think? I think
it is not to Jurgen, but to the whole thing. And I don't mean I mean fuck off to life. I mean this is some hack to follow. If I was him, I'd think, can we just let this all die down a bit? Can we just have a breathe? And can I just come in and be myself?
You've got to back yourself more, Rob.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think you've got to back yourself to say you're going to do more Jurgen than Jurgen. And he's going to have to come up with some pithy quotes and go, hey, I'm not Jurgen. I'm not even... Jurgen was the special one. I'm actually the one. And whatever. But it is a hard act to follow. And nobody should underestimate that.
No one should underestimate that. I want to talk about slots. We'll do it towards the end of the show. I want to talk about the game in a minute. But the one thing I would say, there's two things, really. If I could, in some way, shape... he could do with a nice fixture list, because the key to all of this is winning helps, and let's remember that with Jurgen as well. For all of Jurgen's magnificence, which clearly is, what really helped was he won loads of footy matches. Yeah. And if that's happening, you can do the other stuff. The other stuff comes easier. Now, there's a chicken and egg thing there. That part of why you win the games is because you're you and all of that sort of stuff. But it is worth, I think, for me, in terms of, I'm not that bothered by the talking, and maybe when the first press conference comes and all of that sort of stuff, it'll be a little bit different. I'm intrigued, so intrigued. It's hard to put into words by pre-season, seeing what the direction of travel is with these players. But almost, I think, what Slot needs to do is he just needs to, almost for it to be August the 17th, start playing some games, get some wins under your belt, and then people will start to say he's an interesting fellow, this Arne Slot. Jurgen, it's worth saying, comes in with all the light and all the noise of it, Rob, but what really, really helps is the first half an hour against Manchester City when we beat them 4-1. Because you get to go, well, that's what it's meant to look like. Like, we just got it there. It's a snapshot not against clowns, against a really good team. We just got to see it there, and then this is what it's meant to look like. This is what it can do. I think it's in the doing as much as the talking, if you see what I mean, for Slot. And I think that was also the case for Klopp. It's just now we remember the other stuff as well. I think the doing is the thing.
Well, it absolutely is. And with Klopp, it was... The thing is, there is a difference of sorts here, and we have to cop for this, and Arne has to cop for it. Klopp came in with one hell of a reputation. The personality was there for all to see. He'd won 2 Bundesligas against Guardiola, right?
No,
one of them against Guardiola.
No.
Was he against Guardiola?
No.
Bayern Munich?
Yeah, Guardiola wasn't a Munich manager until Guardiola wins.
All right, against a Bayern team that won every fucking year. Won every fucking year. And he got to a Champions League final. So he came in with all the pedigree under. So let's put it this way. The reason there was... I felt total joy when he came in. Like he talked about arriving at Liverpool as being like when he met his wife. He just knew it was right from the first minute. I knew when Jurgen came in, it was right from the first minute because I knew he was world top 3, and I knew you knew his reputation. He's exactly what we needed. But no disrespect to Brendan Rodgers, but when we were searching for a manager, when we were trying to appoint Brendan, it was Martinez, Brendan, all manner of other bums, quite frankly. And you went, fucking hell. But this time almost for the first time, in our manager searching life, you go, wow, we are getting one of the top guys. And he came in. So there was money in the bank. So when we go to Tottenham on that first weekend, he's there, and we get a hard-fought 0-0. We're all able to say, oh, did you see how they were running? How Lallana fell into his arms when he came off the pitch. We can see what's happening. And then within a fortnight or 3 weeks, we've gone and won at City, like you've referenced, Neil. Was it a week or so later, we go and win at Chelsea 3-1. And you're ready to believe. Doesn't matter that a couple of weeks after that we have some crappy defeat at Watford.
Watford comes straight after the City game, I think I'm right in saying.
Well, it's pretty close. I think it comes, and I think we lose at Newcastle just after we've beaten Southampton 6-0 in the League Cup. So it's a roller coaster of a first season, but there is so much belief in the man. Okay, he's talking that we should believe in him, but it's there to start with. And a relative rookie in world sense. Klopp was a world football manager the day he arrived. And this is it takes time to become one. And Slot's beginning his journey perhaps earlier. Maybe in an ideal world he goes and wins 2 Bundesligas with Borussia Dortmund before he gets the Liverpool job. But that's what was out there. But you are right. There's no harm in winning first 4 of your first 5, and a good fixture. But you know what? The bastards at the fixture list. You know we're playing Wolves on the last day of the season. You know we're getting Chelsea away probably in the first 5. You know how this works. We might get a couple of homes we like. We'll get some nasty aways. He won't get a nice fixture list, unfortunately, because we never fucking do. And it's not me cry-arsing it in. It's just the way that stupid computer works somehow. Thou shalt play Wolves on the last day, Chelsea in the first 5, whatever it is. There's an undeniable rhythm to how our fixtures fall. Do you know what I mean? Well, and I don't think it just feels like that. I think there's a pattern of how the computer sets itself up around all the clubs. So I don't think he's going to get the privilege of to be bitter about it. The sort of starts that Man United seem to get, where they get 6 of the bottom 7 in the first six games. So it is what it is going to be. It's going to be a test of his mettle, and it's going to be a ride for him.
We'll do the game because it did happen. It is a thing. Shocked, Josh, looking at the stats afterwards, that Liverpool had 35 shots. Genuinely, if you'd asked me to write them down, I might have got to 7 and then maybe put 8 blocked. I certainly wouldn't have got you to 35. And yet, the people who count these things, they are not taken away by emotion. They instead can sort of sit there and make sure that they tot them up. It's obviously red card influenced, so let's be clear about that as well. I want to also say I think it's a difficult day for Wolves. It's not the same as being Arsenal or West Ham, where there's a sporting party to spoil, if you see what I mean. I think that it is different in this instance, being, coming up and knowing that, even if you're a player like Cunha, unless you score the greatest hat-trick of your life, no one's going to remember anything you do on the day, if you see what I mean. You are so secondary to all the palaver. So I think, I think they actually do all right when they go down to 10 for a couple of extended periods. But as soon as they go down to 10, Liverpool are just going to win the game. Josh, I think it was just bang on that Liverpool were just going to win the game one way or another.
Yeah. Did you see the expected goals on this?
Yeah, absolutely.
5.5.
It's StatsBomb has it at 4.4 non-cumulative because, for instance, it doesn't. They do height adjustment stuff on things like the Diaz attempt, so it's not quite as mad on StatsBomb. But yeah, StatsBomb got it at 4.3 all in.
Yeah, still a bit of a dominant one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yes, it is. And it also means that Liverpool underperform it by 2. Jose Sarr plays really well.
Yeah, but I've been wondering lately, though, like, if Arne Slot's been watching the matches lately, which I think he probably has. I think he's been asked about, like, do you watch Premier League games? And I think he said, like, if the Premier League's on, I'll watch it. So it's probably his way of hinting, yeah. And I think if he's been watching Liverpool, he's probably seen a lot of what is good and a lot of what's bad, maybe, in terms of, like... On the attacking side, I think there's some refinement to do, a bit of polishing maybe. But I think generally we have probably a title-winning attack. Maybe not the finishing. The finishing will come. But in terms of creating stuff, right up there with the best in the league, best in Europe, really. But then, even despite posting 35 shots against Wolves, they have 10 men, there's still 1 or 2 moments where they get in. And we just need to find a way to stop that from happening, really. And that's where the next manager comes in. Maybe you can do that by being a little bit smarter on the ball and creating a little bit less. But when you do, it's a bit more efficient. It's a bit more safe almost when you're getting done going the opposite way. But I think it sums up though what he's coming into. He's coming into a really offensive squad full of individuals who are just really creative, and you've got the last pass from everywhere. All really good age as well for the most part. And you've got chances of getting creative from everywhere as well. Both sides of the pitch were really good yesterday. You've got centre mids who were sitting behind the ball, scoring headers in the box. In terms of Ali Mack, so just a really talented squad. But I also think there's quite clearly elements to work on, and sort will probably be picking them up.
I like the line last pass from everywhere. I think from Josh there. I think that's absolutely spot on. It doesn't seem wild, the idea that Van Dijk or Kwanzaa could find a way to get, certainly against a team that wants to play quite high, a way to create a genuine opportunity for a Liverpool forward. All 3 of those forwards can create, whichever 3 picks can create opportunities for each other. You look back through those midfielders, they all feel as though they can create opportunities. You look at the fullbacks, they can all create opportunities. That's why this is a really difficult Liverpool team to defend, because the last pass could come from anywhere. The finishing this season remains a bit of a conversation, as does what's gone on in our own penalty area. But the idea of at any given time, that's why you have 35 shots. Any of them can set someone up.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't disagree with lots of what Josh has said there. I think that there are loads and loads of positives, and I think for the new fella, it doesn't feel like there's got to be anything hugely kind of radical, but I think there are clear weaknesses that need to be addressed, and maybe we got away with it for a little bit because we are an extremely attacking team where even though we are missing chances, we do still score plenty of goals. But I think structurally, he will have to get a grip of it a little bit. It's been obvious for a while, and Liverpool have been punished on a number of occasions. And it's not just a back four, back five thing, although I do think, there's some things going on in that area of the pitch that isn't quite right. I remember listening to something Franco Baresi said a while ago when he was interviewed about the Milan team of the late 80s, early 90s. And there was this theory in this thing that they never spoke to each other on the pitch. They just didn't communicate at all. So it would have been Baresi, Maldini, Costa Curta, and Sassotti would have been the back four. That just didn't hardly concede goals. I think 87, 88, they conceded 14 goals. It's mad. But he says we didn't concede goals, and we didn't have to talk on the pitch because we were so well drilled. We were absolutely drilled to within an inch of our lives. And if I'm being honest, looking at Liverpool defensively certainly over the last 6 to 8 weeks, they don't look hugely well drilled in those moments, in those areas where they know where they need to be if things break down. And it's not just, as I say, it's not just the goalkeeper and the back four. And I think the goalkeeper's been magnificent. I think sometimes he puts us under a little bit of pressure with kind of being a little bit too casual. And you could probably aim that at lots of them in that area of the pitch where maybe it just needs to be a bit more pessimism as opposed to always thinking about the best case scenario.
I think you can aim that at them in all areas of the pitch.
Yeah.
I think they enjoy the football at times just a little bit too much. It's mad that they have 35 shots because there was stuff around the box yesterday where they were doing that trick of making the likelihood of scoring less with one pass or one touch or something like that. And that, I think you can go all the way back to the goalkeeper with that. I think there's been a thing. I think it ran all the way through the season, if we're all honest, and I'm fine with that in a number of ways. But I think that, Ian, they really do enjoy their own football a lot of the times, and there's times when you're playing a football match where you need to have 10 minutes where it isn't fun.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. And listen, some of these players we're talking about, they are arguably the best in their position. Certainly the goalkeeper, certainly Van Dijk. Trent, I love him as a footballer, but he has, and someone's going to make a decision on him. Do you want to be a defender? Do you love the art of defender? Do you really love that bit where sometimes you've got to dig in and you've got to be the version of yourself that probably doesn't come most natural because he's so good going the other way. He's unreal going the other way. We all know that. We don't really need to talk about it too much because we've all seen it with our own eyes. But the other bit, and Everton at Goodison Park is an example where you've got to jump with Calvert-Lewin, and it's not a fun thing to do because you can out-jump most people, but you've got to put yourself in that situation where you've got to look like you want to do that. And there's lots of times where you're looking at some of these footballers and I'm not quite convinced that they want to do the hard yards when it comes to bodies on the line. And in midfield, I think there are areas where you think, there's obvious areas where you can strengthen and where you can upgrade. And listen, Endo's at a decent start to his Liverpool career, but if we're all honest, he's not quite the level that's going to take you to a league title, and that's fine because I don't think anyone thought he was, and he overperforms a little bit and then he reverts back to mean a little bit. And there's others in there as well. You think, actually, is it quite all singing, all dancing when it needs to be? And the forwards, loads of positives. But I said before the show, I said to Rob, you can make cases for accepting offers on any of them because for different reasons. Jota is availability, but others it might be age, it might be wastefulness. And Josh talks a little bit about, the ability to create chances and eventually it'll come. Well, you hope it'll come, but it might not come for some of them. Darwin Núñez might not end up where he needs to end up, and he might not build on those 11 league goals because that's it. And I've championed him a lot, but that's a really poor return to be operating in his Liverpool team on a very fairly consistent basis until recently when he got dropped and there's been 1 or 2 injuries. You have to deliver more. You simply have to deliver more. And the interesting thing for me is what does the manager do? Does he give some of these a chance? Does he give most of them a chance? Almost certainly he will do. But does he have preconceived ideas on others where he thinks actually your time will be best served elsewhere and I've got my own lads who I want to bring in? And that's why this summer is so intriguing in terms of what happens.
I thought it was interesting a lot of what Klopp said as a retrospective on his own tactics during the time, during the 8.5 years he's had here, and how what he considered as his achievements tactically for Liverpool and within the context of football, quite frankly, have changed or evolved this season. He talked very much about, hey, we were the people who played two what people called wingers as actual strikers. So that we played. He said we all but invented the number 9, the false 9 position with the Firmino position. We were the people that put the fullbacks higher up the pitch than anyone had ever done and left them up there. And he said, and people had a go at me about midfielders not scoring goals. Well, what do you think I was doing? I had to have 3, effectively, not his words, but effectively saying I had to have 3 journeymen. Now contrast, so though he considered those as his achievements, him and his coaching staff's tactical coaching achievements during his reign at Liverpool, the strikers, the high-up fullbacks, the shielding midfield, and his high line, obviously. Well, what have we seen this season? We've seen no false 9, really. Well, not really, not when Darwin Núñez plays. We haven't seen 2 wingers play as attackers. We've seen 1.5 play as attackers because Diaz has been very wide a lot of the time, hasn't he? It's not Mane. It's not the way Mane and Salah are. We're all trying to be within 8 yards of Firmino at the same time. Those gaps have been different. We have seen goals from midfield. I mean, no one else really stops to talk about this, but I was looking at the numbers yesterday. We've got 5 or 6 lads who've got 5 or 6 goals from midfield. It's really impressive. But it speaks to something else is going on. I'd almost like to have sat him down as going, we're at the beginning of something. You're not going to get to see this through. What were you thinking? Because things are clearly changing. And obviously, and going back to Ian's point about Trent, I mean, what is the long-term plan there? You can see loads of positives and negatives in what we've seen this season. The Trent thing yesterday for me was a reminder that we're far from having solved that problem, and in a way, a clean pair of eyes on it will be good for us, I think, because Trent first half didn't seem to know where he wanted to be. He had that free roll. He was tucking into spaces, looking to come infield of Salah in the first half in particular, and finding himself sort of surrounded by a sea of bodies. They weren't directly marking him, but nobody wanted to find him. And I thought, you've got to be where everyone wants to find you. You know, there's talented with the ball at your feet on the pitch, near as damn it, but you're not finding space in the right way. Whereas, in simpler times, he's as wide or as far forward as you need him to be. And I think it's also instructive when we properly look back at this season, this evolution of the Klopp season tactically. Our best football was played when things got kind of simple. And it's not a dig at Trent, but it's when we had one right back fit and he was a lad who played in quite a conventional, good attacking right back style. Seemed to make life that little bit easier. And the midfield seemed to be a hell of a lot more balanced. Also, we had midfielders out, so we ended up putting Endo and McAllister together. I don't know. I think it's interesting what journey we've been on, and whether Slot thinks I'm going to continue with that journey. I've spoken to Jurgen. I understand where they were building towards, or whether he goes, no, clean sheet. I'm going to look at them all and think of them in my way.
It is really interesting. I think throughout the season we've been kind of a mix of lots of different tactical ideas, whereas originally it felt like we had a fixed blueprint. We knew exactly what to expect every single week. Players complemented each other profile-wise, and it worked like that. It feels like this season we've been a little bit more on the fly, a little bit more reliant on individual brilliance to get us out of moments, get us out of stick. But I think looking at next season moving forward, I think the obvious gains for me will be made by improving defensively and giving away less defensively. But I think you achieve that personally by being better drilled, like as Ian says, certainly. But I think you can be smarter on the ball. I think Liverpool, I've been saying this all season, Liverpool have been a bit nuts, a bit like, you need an element of chill in there sometimes. And I think it's sometimes it is too vertical, too back to front, too on the fly, to the extent where when you lose the ball, Trent is like in the middle of nowhere. Diaz has swapped places with Gakpo. Alexis McAllister's on the edge of the box, and it's just a bit mad like that. Whereas if you look at our two title rivals, City and Arsenal, it's very like
so controlled. Isn't it?
We are set when we try to create something. And if we do lose the ball, you've got Rice there sweeping up. He's absolutely sound. You've got the back four basically still being very much a back four. I think the Trent thing's interesting because over time, I think Liverpool have just naturally wanted to give Trent more and more creative freedom. And I think it's got to a point where now, if you was to basically cut the pitch in half, straight down the middle, he's basically got license the entire right side of the pitch, go wherever you want. Wherever the space is, wherever you think you can impact the game, go there. And I think maybe we've reached the point where you almost need someone to come in and say, no, this is exactly what you do, because it's got more and more do what you want. And maybe it gets the most out of them creatively, but I think team-wise, you maybe now need to decide, right, what's he doing here now then? Is he a centre mid? Is he playing in the 2? Is he playing as a conventional wide, touchline hugging right back? Is he an inverted full back? It's very flux at the minute, and I think he will benefit more than anyone, to be honest, from just someone coming in. Like what Guardiola would do, I think, would put his arm around him and say, "This is what you are." I don't think Guardiola would just say, "Do what you want." I think he needs a bit more of a role, a bit more of a plan. And I think Liverpool would benefit defensively and offensively, to be honest, on the back of doing that.
I think there's always something in the double-edged sword of a free roll. Free rolls always sound great in theory, but if someone's in a free roll and they're not producing, it can that's all over the pitch. I always feel that's all over the pitch. It's not just sort of particular to trends, but I think if you end up with a free roll, like I thought that Villa was amongst the poorest games I've ever seen him have.
Recent Villa?
Yeah, the 1-3-3.
Well, it's funny that the first Villa game, earlier in the season, 4 games in, is the best I've seen him play in a long time. I thought he was brilliant in that game. He was picking up the ball in centre-half spots, swapping places with Matip, who was drifting out wide. And he was accelerating the game. It was all on him. Every time we accelerated the game, it was Trent doing it, creating chances, slowing the play down and all that. But since then, we've installed loads of different ideas. We're not doing the box midfield as much anymore, and I mean, we still are, but it's just, I mean, he picked up an injury, so maybe that...
And he plays some of his best football in November and December, when he plays some of the best football I've ever seen anyone play. He's that good for a period, and that's the funny thing. But yeah, I think free rolls end up, if you're not careful, being massively double-edged swords, Ian. And, with him, maybe it is clarity, maybe it is whatever. I'm quite, not just with him, as I say, I'm looking forward to seeing what the next phase is and what the new ideas are, because I think you can see that most of the tools are there. This is the key thing for me. You can see that most of the tools are there. There's magic that you need to have, which is mostly involving the ball going in the goal from time to time, and managers can do a lot, but they can't kick it in the goal. It's worth pointing that out for anyone. But I think that, we'll go on and talk about Slot properly now in a second or two, but I think that there's so much potential there. It's just maybe time just to make a couple of decisions, whether that's on Trent, whether that's on someone else. Time to make a couple of decisions.
Yeah, and I don't think it is just a Trent thing. I mean, Josh was talking about the Villa game there, and that was probably quietly one of our best performances of the season. You see Núñez at his best that day as well. He kind of finishes off what is a really difficult chance. He gets a through ball from McAllister, but it's such a tough finish, that, and you think, wow, this guy, when he wants to, he really has got that subtle, delicate thing in his locker as well, and you want to see a little bit more of that. But I think other question marks, like I've been watching Liverpool recently, and you sometimes find it hard to talk about Salah in a way that maybe shines a negative light on him because of what he's delivered over his time. He's been absolutely sensational. He's one of Liverpool's greatest ever goal scorers, and that remains right at the heart of kind of everything, really. What he's done, what he's achieved, what he may still go on to do. But I do think there's a conversation now about where you play him, and the more and more I've seen of him out wide in that kind of right hand side position, I'm just not convinced that he's going to be able to kind of continue to do that. And then there is this thing where, well, do you shift him more central because there's less work for him to do? I mean, Liverpool have always, certainly under the manager, under Jurgen, we've had these kind of partnerships and these kind of... It's
interesting that we're talking about Trent and we're talking about Salah, and that they're that right-hand side
This is what I mean, yeah. It's what I'm coming on to. So when it was at its very best with Trent, Henderson and Salah, you knew exactly what you were going to get. And on the other side, Robertson, Wijnaldum, Mane, you knew exactly what you were going to get. It was so well drilled. And it feels like we've, probably understandably, given some of the players shifting around, we've come a long way from that. But I look at Salah now and I just think, has he got the ability at times to drop in and do some of the things you need a wide forward to do? I'm not so sure. But it is difficult because we've seen him have poor ends to seasons before, and he's come back with a vengeance, and you think, well, maybe he didn't see that coming because he's into his 30s, and players can just fall off. It can happen, even to the very greatest. So you're never quite sure, and you don't want to kind of put a nail in the coffin that isn't necessary. And I'm not saying he's finished, but I do think, come back to the point I made before, if Liverpool got a serious offer from Mohamed Salah, and it was of a certain amount, I think they will consider it, because he's going into his last year. They won't want him to leave for nothing, because that feels foolish in a model that Liverpool operate, where they'll spend what they bring in. But I wouldn't be rushing to give him a new deal, a longer term deal anytime soon, in terms of 2, 3, 4 years, if you're committing to the kind of dough he's on. Because if you're going to pay someone 350, 400 grand a week, they're got to fucking deliver on a regular basis. So I think that's one where they've got to really have a think about what they do with Salah. And it might be that you shift him central if he's still got enough kind of, gas in the tank, and therefore he goes on another bit of a journey, another level where he's brilliant centrally and he's scoring all kinds of goals. But I do think that will be something the new manager's going to have to think about. What is my Mohamed Salah plan?
I agree. I mean, well, I think it was you said it, Josh, on the show recently. Salah, he needs to play in the middle now. If we're to keep him,
that wasn't me.
Wasn't you?
No,
fella looked like you. I don't know.
I think Josh actually disagrees with that, but go on.
So it wasn't you, Josh. It was the opposite.
I've just said it. People have said it before. Absolutely.
We can't. We can't be a team that wants to get in behind people and do overloads on one side of the pitch and have a winger, however great he was, not able to really beat his man in a wide position anymore. I don't think that's a thing. But I do think he is potentially, to use a very old reference, has the potential to be like Gerd Muller in the middle, like an absolutely lethal striker. There was a little cameo of it yesterday where he nearly gets a shot away. He's right dead on the penalty spot. I think the ball comes in from the left and he does a little thing with his feet in the first half, gets the ball out and gets a shot that's blocked. And I thought, fucking hell, that's just a little microcosm of what he could do. We're so used to seeing him use his talents from wide positions that I think if all he's got to think about is his movement around the penalty spot, or maybe just even dropping 6 yards back from that to occasionally thread somebody else in, I think that could be really, really exciting. Whether that's worth another 400 grand a week contract for 3 years, I don't know.
I think the only issue I've got with it, I'd like to see it as maybe an experiment or whatever, but what the red flag I've got in my head is it makes me think of Ronaldo at United, where you get to a point with him where he's aging to the extent where you're reliant on him to finish the move, but he's doing literally nothing else whatsoever. I don't think Salah's there yet, but
no.
If you're getting worried to the extent where you don't want to play him on the flanks no more and you want to play him through the middle, I don't know, maybe rather than doing that, you do just cash in then and just...
That's what I'm saying.
But I think
under consideration.
But I think that the idea, let's be clear about this, the footballer's got all the agency.
Yeah, he has.
Yeah, he has, yeah.
And that's the misbeat in all of this, the footballer's got all the agency.
Yeah, the thing I've been kind of, whenever we've talked about Salah, the point I've been kind of ramming home is that ideally you need to do everything you can to get a fee for him whenever he leaves. I think... he might want to leave on a free and get the send-off that everyone else got the other day, but ideally you get a fee, like Real Madrid got a fee for Ronaldo, and let him go like that, and then reinvest that like we invested the Coutinho money in, funnily enough, the defence again, something like that. But my worry is just getting to a point with him where we're basically carrying him in every department to the, because he's so good at finishing the move. I'm just not sure you want to get to that point with him. But I don't know. It's tricky, really. But I think you're right, though, that the bottom line is it's his decision, and it's on him.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan Morgan of this parish has written an excellent book about Jurgen Klopp's time at Liverpool. It's called Jurgen Said to Me. Did an event with him last week, doing one in London a week on Wednesday. Got to remember it's a week on Wednesday. I've been saying to everybody it's this Wednesday. It's a good job he reminded me, to be honest with you. Otherwise I'd have been on the train, and that would have been embarrassing for all concerned. So here, though, last week when he was in, I spoke to Dan Morgan about his book Jurgen Said to Me. Here's 10 minutes of it, and it was very, very good indeed. It's Neil Atkinson with Dan Morgan. Jurgen Said to Me, Dan's book that is out now. If you are watching this on Monday, which you will be, that's when it's out, as part of the Anfield Wrap after Jurgen's last game. Dan's book, newly written, newly released, all in there is out now, Jurgen Said to Me. And it's very, very good indeed. It's a pleasure to read, a pleasure to go through. And one of the reasons why is because as a solo written book goes, Dan, it's hugely collaborative. You spoke to loads and loads of people, got their views, their insights. Sean O'Donnell's stuff in it is absolutely brilliant. Yep. You got people to really sort of talk about the way in which, effectively, how much Klopp's been a key figure, not just in a Liverpool Football Club sense for the last 9 years, but he's actually been a huge figure in the sense of the city for the last 9 years.
Yeah, I think that is the main thing that I wanted to get across. I think when you lean into Jurgen's yearning for normality, in a sense, I thought it would be really good to create an idea whereby you bring those normal people in and bring them to his level.
Yep.
In many ways, that was the thing he was always trying to achieve, right?
Yeah.
He wanted to bring us up here and himself and the team down there to meet halfway for us to both go and achieve. And so, you know, I think in loads of ways the idea was to speak to stakeholders, to speak to people who prop up the city, the community every day, and almost tell a story parallel of, well, what is Liverpool? What is Liverpool over the last 8 years? What is the city's concept of change and journey in line with the team and the manager and me as well, which is sort of the fourth protagonist of the book, I guess.
Yeah, you're in there all the way through because you're talking about your own personal journey within there as well, both sort of being in the city, making a decision to come and contribute with us, which is great, and then choosing to move away, and then the way you see the city now when you return.
Yeah. Through
Through that lens a little bit, which I think is really interesting. It is through the lens of him in a number of ways, but not just him, the way in which he's, to your point, wanted to sort of raise everybody up as much as possible, which I think we've seen loads of in the last 6 weeks. Like, I feel as though last 4-6 weeks, you've seen that idea of him almost wanting to reach out directly to people he's felt have got a real connection with him.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I just said, when I created the book, I created this arc of 4 characters. You know, Jürgen, the city, the football club, and then me. You know, I'm more narrator than character, I'd say, throughout the book.
Yeah.
But I'd say definitely the prologue's mine and the epilogue's mine in its own way, and that's fine for me. You know, that's enough of me that I wanted to have in there. But you're totally right. I do talk about how I viewed Liverpool during this process and this time, and how I view it now from a different geographical perspective, but also from a wider perspective of the journey that we've all been on with Jürgen. And I think we've all gone through the same thing. You know, I think we all get to look at this time as it's coming to an end with him and look into and reach further into our own growth as people, our own sort of relationship with the place that we're from, whatever relationship it is we have with Liverpool. Maybe, you know, that's as from an outside external perspective that you sometimes reach into, or from an inside perspective that you sometimes reach out of. But I think there's all of these things that you can extrapolate from it and become real and become relative. You know, people collectively, you know, a younger generation gets to have its own thing.
That's what I think is, you know, there's, as I mentioned Sean before as one of the contributors within the book, and people will know Sean from doing Anfield Wrap stuff and stuff that he's done with Boss. The way he talks about, and this to me is the most interesting Klopp thing in a number of ways, Jürgen wasn't in Shevchenko Park.
No.
Jürgen created the circumstance, was part of creating the circumstances why it happens, and is part of creating the weather for that space to fill. But then Sean sort of refers to it as like, it was as though this thing happened, and it was this informal but really solidly agreed to collective mission statement that this is what this is all meant to be for us.
Yeah.
And Jürgen's, as I say, he's not there. He's probably never even been to the place.
Yeah.
He's in he's in his own world. But that doesn't happen without him. But it still doesn't happen without the people who also made that happen and were part of the whole process. And to me, that's the really interesting thing about Jürgen in this period, and it's brilliantly put over in the book, is that Jürgen's not sat on everyone's shoulders all the way through this and saying, you should do this now and you should do this now. But it's that the circumstances, he creates this space that all these different people fill.
Yeah. Sean was brilliant.
Oh, it's great.
He was tremendous, you know, just learning about Boss's journey.
Yeah.
You know, and how they went on their own sort of weaving pathway towards Jürgen Klopp arriving at Liverpool, and Boss has this whole backdrop before the manager even arrives. And so, you know, that is a microcosm of all of these things that had to be in place for that October day to happen. But to your point about Shevchenko Park, you know, the more we were both there, and the more I think about that day, it was almost as if the celebration happened before the game had kicked off.
Yeah.
You know, it was almost like parade-like inside that park, and it was a bit hedonistic. You know, it was that sort of fever dream type of feel.
It really was. It was very hedonistic.
It was, and that in its own way played into it. But I think I couldn't agree with you more. You know, Jürgen was almost like he was the father pushing the child without the stabilizers, and then suddenly, you know, the child's riding the bike on his own. He was, you know, I'm going to lay this foundation for you, but you have to collectively go and do this yourself. And that was the thing he always told us, I think. You know, I don't know whether you'd agree or not, but I think he always sort of said or implied, this has always been in you. This has always been here. I just needed to bring it out or encourage it a little bit more. And so, you know, I guess that idea of us becoming in some way, shape or form, and even if it was only for a window, the best version of ourselves, was something that maybe he strived for all along and maybe knew he could encourage out of us.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued by, you know, the way he speaks now. Just almost get it's a broader theme than the book, but I think that's why I think he does see it as different to Dortmund and even different to Mainz. I think what he does internally at football clubs is, you know, I think he gets his players to be the best versions of themselves. But I think this idea that, and he probably himself couldn't tell you how. In fact, I think he all but said that when we interviewed him the other day. He's almost like he almost couldn't tell you how it happened, but he knows it has. That a lot of the people connected to the club in so many ways, and I mean that genuinely. I mean like the worldwide fan base. I mean people who are just going to supporters clubs and having a great time. That what he's able to do is he's able to say, this is how you can be the best you for a period in the context of this football club. You know, there's supporters clubs have sprung up all over the globe, and I think that's something so exceptional, that, and I think that's what he sees the magic as. And I don't think he sees himself as the magician. I think he sees himself as somebody else who's been around whilst the trick's gone on, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, totally. It's really interesting that, you know, I think one of the reasons that people dislike Liverpool so much who don't support them is that, you know, Liverpool very much sees itself as unique.
Exceptionalism, yeah.
Exceptionalism in that sense. But, you know, one of the things that comes up all the time is this idea that we had something unique to ourselves in this period. And what was that? Well, you know, we all try to see representation in what we're doing in this. And to have that and to attain it through what we got was quite unique, actually.
Yeah.
You know, that idea of when this person talks, he hits that spot so perfectly that we are unanimously behind it. And even if we're not, even if we disagree conceptually with something he says, we're still behind the overriding concept. You know, so, you know, Houllier was
the
always...
values that they're based on.
Yeah, exactly. For example, Houllier always carried an air of a school teacher about him. And that can be very sort of make or break in a way for people. And so it becomes less about what is being said and more the manner in which he says it. You know, the thing I'll always come back to, and I reference it in the book and I love it, is the Scott Dan Crystal Palace goal on 82 minutes.
Yep.
And it's, you know, it's days later and he says, I felt very alone in that moment because the ground empties on 82. Yep. And he says, we could have scored 8 goals in that 8 minutes.
But you weren't here. We
decide when it's over. I felt very alone. What an incredible, perfectly pitched tone of message that is. You know, that is, and that laid the spade work for West Brom, which completely gets the point missed about it, for Dortmund, and then for everything else that follows. You know, you've got that, but you've got that message had to be on point at that time, and by God, you know, it was so. I think it was so Jurgen in the way that one of the things he's done best over this time, and one of the lessons we've all learned from him, is his ability to delegate as a leader.
Yep.
You know, that, and I think that's one of the things that you take from him as the person, is he is very, very secure in himself 99% of the time, so much so that he is willing to delegate just to get everything else around him right, to make the thing the best it can be.
The best it can be. The book is genuinely excellent. I'm very proud of Dan on this, having read it this week. It's genuinely excellent, and I'm delighted it is, because it would have been embarrassing if it wasn't for all concerned. But it is. It's very much worth buying, worth reading, worth getting stuck into. It's a hell of a monument, especially on this week of weeks after the manager has indeed gone his separate ways with the football club. It's always a pleasure to speak to Dan. I'm going to do it longer about the book for subscribers to the Anfield Wrap and the themes and the matters that are arising out of it. So, you know, if you want more of that, make sure that you subscribe. But if you want more of this, and you should, if you've got an interest in everything that this city's been through in the last 9 months, this is actually quite a key little historical document here. It is that good indeed. Thank you very much to Dan. Let's get back over for the rest of the show. Do check it out. That is Dan's book. Dan's book is excellent. Do check it out, Jurgen said to me. And we've got an interview coming up with him, a longer form conversation between me and Dan about the whole thing. That'll be out on the Anfield Wrap if you subscribe in the next couple of days. Yesterday on Post-Match Pint, I announced that I also have a book coming out about Jurgen, but mine's in September. But I'd like you to get your pre-order in right now, if you don't mind. Thank you very much indeed. The purpose of this book is to become a #1 bestseller. Hardback books, you don't have to sell that many of them in this country to get #1 in the charts, unless it's the same time as a certain style of cookbook or some sort of something that involves someone from the royal family or something like that. Do you know what I mean? But we need to beat those bastards. So what I need is to sell a certain number of those books. Anything that you buy in this country before that point, I think publication date is currently slated to be in September the 26th. I want to be clear, I haven't finished it yet. I've still got more words to write in order to get it in and get it done. This has been pulled together relatively quickly, but I've got a really clear idea of what it is I'm trying to do with reference to the text, but I want to be really clear. I've got a really clear idea that I want to be #1 on the bestseller chart. So if you can buy the book, that'd be brilliant.
Regardless of merit or quality.
Yeah, and the fact that it isn't even finished. I'm literally flogging unfinished wares here right now. That's what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it relentlessly. The text should be finished by the 31st of May. What date is it today? The 20th?
20th today.
20th, yeah.
What to do?
Are you still doing 5,000 a day?
But not. I mean,
That was
there are days where I need to do 5,000. So this Wednesday,
That's steps, I think.
no. I could do with doing that as well, Rob. But we'll take that one step at a time. This Wednesday's a big day for me. I'm not going to lie to you, Josh. There's a lot we need to get through on Wednesday. It's about all sorts of stuff, but it's about what it's been like under Jurgen Klopp, what he's made you think, what he's made you feel, and also so on and so forth. Also, the idea of the way football could or should change. That's in there as well. We did well yesterday, so I don't want anyone getting complacent if you're listening to this. It was a decent show, and the publishers emailed me before and said, yep, like it, done all right, but we don't get carried away. We've won nothing yet. We've won nothing yet.
That's the message.
It is absolutely the message. We've won nothing yet. We're going to go from there. So yes, more and more talk coming on about that, and hopefully we'll do the business. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to move on and talk about these questions and where Slot sort of fits into them. I sent you a very hasty agenda earlier on, and at the end of that agenda...
hasty, none of us have read it.
Yeah, that's how hasty it was, and it's a shame because it's good.
Oh, good. Look forward to it later.
Punchy, but good. What 3 things does he need to do?
Arne Slot.
Yeah.
Win is what is what the glib answer would be. What 3 things? Okay, his first order of business.
Because I think you already touched on certain tactical things, what you feel as though needs to be a little bit different. But what if you are Arne Slot, you're sitting down with him. I think today, tomorrow, I think he'll want to get his feet under the table as quickly as humanly possible. I think he'll feel as though it is the biggest job of his life. It is the biggest job of his life. What 3 things you need to do?
I mean, the first one's sort of obvious, and I don't know how he goes about it, and it's a thankless task. But it is to be able to plan how he walks into his first team meeting with that squad, and without apologising for not being Jurgen Klopp, manages to assert and imbue authority from the get-go, and that's a really, really hard thing. Or say, I can't imbue or give you an impression of authority from the get-go, but you're going to have to work with me on this one because we're in it together. I don't know quite how he's going to do that. Technically, what has he got to do? What I sort of fantasize and think about the conversations he and Jurgen might have throughout the summer, and I'm hoping it's more than 1 half-hour phone call. I'm hoping there's a series that they do. Because Jurgen's such a self-effacing, selfless human being that he will give Arne all the time he requires. I'd like him to talk about how they're all much better at set pieces in the Premier League than anywhere else in the world. And somebody should have told Jurgen that more forcefully, I think, in his first season.
I think that all managers, though, Guardiola's first season, you see it as well.
They're all shocked by it.
I think that there's a lot of lived reality of the Premier League that until you've lived it, people can tell you about it, but until you've experienced it.
That's it.
The thing I keep coming back to, Rob, and I'll throw this open to the table as well, is... I always use West Ham as an example because they finished 9th.
Yeah.
But Paquetá, Bowen and Kudus are all Champions League quality footballers. They're sitting there for 9th. And in the Premier League, we played them earlier this season at the run of 3 away games against Fulham, the Merseyside derby, and then at 12:30 on the Saturday, we had West Ham. And they've got those 3 players, and they can play those 3 players in a 4-2-3-1 with those 3 behind the one. And, I think it's not just the idea of set pieces now, but I think,
Well, they can hurt you, and they can a Grock can just head one in.
Exactly. And that's the quality. You go, Palace at the minute are the best team in Europe.
Yeah.
You're going all the way down the league and just looking at an unbelievable level of quality, and I think that's the biggest challenge for anyone who was coming in from abroad at this point, anyone.
Well, that's actually absolutely it. And this is the reason why. I mean, I think we've said in some of the shows, like the management gutter preview shows we've done, is we don't have to be unduly patient with a new man. We have a right to have our expectations, and if he doesn't deliver at a very high competitive level first season, we're entitled to ask questions as to whether we should go again. But, and I subscribe to that broadly, but the more and more I think about it, the closer it's getting to it, there is definitely an acclimatisation period for a manager that feels like a bigger deal than it is for, sorry, it's my phone alarm going off, I apologise to listeners everywhere, that applies to a manager almost more than it applies to a player. A player can take a player ages to bed in, but also they can get used to it, like a Fernando Torres within the first week of a season.
Well, the thing I will point out is that, again, sorry, I'll bring the other two in a minute, but the thing I will point out, Rob, is that in the last 18 months, Unai Emery, Eddie Howe, Ange Postecoglou, Roberto De Zerbi, there's 4, I think there's Iriola in the end, he does take 9 games, but he's had a really strong first season. These characters have they've all hit the ground running. In the end for Postecoglou, it's maybe not gone quite as he'd have hoped, certainly if you'd ask him where he was in October, November, but it's a strong enough start.
Do you think they've watched it more, the modern manager, than the guys of 10 years ago, and even 8.5 years ago when Jurgen walked in? Do you think the Premier League just gets bigger with each passing year? Maybe it's the main football they all watch outside their own league, so maybe that's not the case. But you asked me what my wish list would be, that he gets himself up to speed very, very quickly on the nuances.
Yeah, I think there's probably something in that around kind of less secrets and stuff. But what Rob's talking about there, I wouldn't get too hung up on the kind of, he's not Jurgen Klopp. We know that the players will know that.
But it's knowing it, and
of course. But you know what? Like, we can sit here right now and we're all gutted the manager's gone. But I guarantee there'll be certain players that are fine with it. They're fine with that he's leaving because he may not be playing them, and that's pretty much what players are interested in. They want to get picked, and they want to play football matches, and the ones that aren't, well, yeah, they're probably up for a change. They're probably up to listening to a new fella come in and possibly give them a chance, and maybe, in the case of a Darwin Núñez, kick them on a little bit and make them feel better and make them maybe live up to that potential, which I think we can say over 2 years, Núñez hasn't quite got there under this manager. So I think there will be little stories and little individuals who've got their own kind of view and thoughts on this. Don't get me wrong, I think the majority will be gutted because they've lived and breathed this manager for 9 years. But he has got to come in, Slot, and be his authentic self. And I know football has changed hugely in terms of the era I'm going to mention now, but you couldn't get a more different manager from Shankly to Paisley. It's completely different.
But the whole backroom team was
of course. But you're talking about a guy there who didn't want the job. There's a reason there's a book called Quiet Genius about him, because he didn't want to be thrust into the limelight. And I know football and the demands and the press conferences is well different now, but you start to deal with players. I mean, Paisley famously, he'd fall out with footballers because he didn't like confrontation. He didn't tell them when he wasn't going to play them in cup finals. There was lads thinking they were going to play in a major cup final, and then you find out on the day or an hour before they weren't starting. And he didn't want to have the conversation with them, and it wasn't too dissimilar when it came to selling players. So what I'm saying is, you're never going to get the same guy, and I'm not for 1 second comparing, what's coming after Jurgen to what came after Shankly, because you just don't know, and it's very unlikely that anyone can hit those levels of success, obviously. But no two fellas are the same, and I think Neil's point around, if he comes in and he wins his first 5 games, then regardless of what he sounds like, and I'm saying this still thinking you do need to have that personality to carry the role in the club, and I think that's something that actually works against the current United manager, the fact that he doesn't feel inspiring. You kind of listen to him and you are a little bit like, fucking hell, lad, just make me feel a little bit better about things. So I do think there's an element to that, but ultimately if you come in and the team looks good and the structure's right and they're winning football matches and it just feels like there's a bit of a plan there, then I think people quickly will get on board with the next thing. But obviously all of those things have to come together.
Yeah, I do think he needs to be himself. I think that definitely goes without saying. But I think performance-wise, as a club, if we just want to get more points next season, I think just everyone has to be aligned in the objective of just get better against the ball, just improve your defensive side, and you will be better next season. I think Liverpool have created more than enough in attack. If they do that again next season, I take your point that Núñez is a bit of a random one in terms of whether the ball will go in or not. But if you're creating that much, Liverpool created the most shots this season, the most expected goals and all that. Do that again, you'll be fine. It's the defensive side that's the weak side. So if you can improve that by maybe getting in some players who are going to move the needle on the defensive side and make a bit more of a difference than the lads we've got now, because we have got loads of players who are ball players, basically. They just want to play with the ball. So if you can fix the personnel side a little bit, and then Slot comes in and does the coaching side of things in that department as well, in terms of drilling the players a bit more defensively, being a bit smarter.
Compact.
A bit more compact, a bit more smart on the ball in terms of when you lose it, when you try something. Even going back to Trent, the whole free roll thing. One of the problems with the free roll thing is if he sees something, he can try it, and that's not a bad thing, right? But if you're not set, you'll get done going the other way. And I think that was our biggest problem last season. One of our biggest problems last season was you still had Trent trying as much as he'd ever tried all the time, but we didn't have the safety net to cope with it, because Henderson couldn't run anymore. Every gang of pensioners in the middle of the park, and he was just getting bypassed. So I think performance-wise, it is very simple. Next season, do exactly the same in attack in terms of what you're creating, at least, or at least attempt to. But defensively, just don't give away as much. And you do that by getting in personnel who are going to make a difference, and coaching the teams to just be a little bit more focused on that side of things. And you should be better.
Happy with that?
Sounds easy, Josh.
It does sound easy. It does.
Just a couple of transformative signings.
That's like bird's eye view stuff, though. That's like, obviously...
I mean,
Are you excited?
I'm hugely excited. What do you mean, though, by defensive? Because we've got quite good defensive personnel. Do you mean midfield?
Well,
the difference between old Klopp and new Klopp is we had midfield screeners. Let's put it this way.
Who's the defensive personnel you're referring to there that are good?
For us, well, Van Dijk.
Yeah.
Andy Robertson's good. Jarrell Quansah's good. Kanate usually is good. I mean, they're decent footballers.
Yeah, but
hang on. Okay, they're defenders of a level. But in midfield, I don't know if any of them are actually defensive footballers. They're all offensive football, apart from Endo, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
They're all offensive. This is what you're saying. I think we're in violent agreement in a roundabout way.
But I think the flip side of that, though, is I think, for instance, we look the solidest we've looked all season when the midfield three was McAllister, Szoboszlai and Jones, in part because Szoboszlai and Jones can really cover ground. And I think that's one of the... But there's two ways to do this. One is that you can ensure that players have got less ground to have to cover quickly, which is the coaching argument. And another one is to ensure that there's greater sort of individual framework in there. And you can do both, or you can do one of those two. But I think that there was a point yesterday, and I think he's had a great season. I love him a great deal. But where Wolves were doing a bit of a counter, and I was watching McAllister run back, and he was running back slower than the lad running with the ball was moving. And that's a problem, because he's got the ball to worry about, and he was running, and the lads who had the balls literally making ground, if you see what I mean, in this race. And McAllister can't. He's running as fast as he can. I know I can see when someone's running as fast as they can. And I think that's for me. So you need to be in a situation where that just never happens. So which is possible. But by that, then you might not be creating anywhere near as many, exactly. You might not be creating as many chances all the way over the course of a game. Or alternatively, you need that runner back to be Dom Szoboszlai, for instance, who can run faster than the lad who's got the ball, but then Szoboszlai's been played and has played himself out of form over an extended period. I think Jones, as I said, this is what I think, Ian. I think it's there is just this little conflict there at times where you're not going to have, you're not going to have 8 physical monsters who are all as creative as you want at the same time, because no one's got that. Not even the sides we're competing with have got that. You're going to have to cut your cloth with every team you pick, no matter who you've bought or who you've sold. You're going to have to cut your cloth accordingly. And I'm excited to see how he sort of squares this circle. That's because I do sort of agree with Josh. I do agree with Josh in the round, but simultaneously you've got to square that circle.
Yeah, and I think we can all sit here and say, well, it needs to be, this player or that player. But I think it is difficult to maybe identify a world-class screener now that will be available. I think that's been spoken about in other shows. How many are there that are suddenly going to be able to be plucked from somewhere and kind of inserted into this Liverpool team? So maybe it'll have to be a structural thing where they'll have to come up with what you've just mentioned there, some kind of variation of that, where they haven't maybe got a perfect one like a Rodri, but they've got...
But how often do you don't see Rodri run back? There's been times this season where Rodri's ran backwards and you're like, Christ, you're not as fast as I thought.
Yeah.
He's got
another example.
But he doesn't do it very often. Doesn't have to. That's the key.
Look at Jorginho, by the way, at Arsenal. Jorginho's the slowest player I've ever seen, mate. But he looks really good at Arsenal.
But you know what they do there with him, though? They pick and choose his games. Like, I know he's appeared a lot more recently, but there was a period where, and when we played him at their place in the league, he hadn't been seen for 3 months, and he'd been available. He was on every bench, and he'd hardly played. And I think that was almost Arteta thinking, well, he's not quite up to speed yet, but also he's got a certain skill set where he suits certain football matches, and I'll play him. And that's obviously, you know, there's been times where, you know, Declan Rice will still get talked about like he's this holding guy, but he's been playing much further forward of late. You know, he came in as maybe that, and people were thinking, well, he's coming at the... But you see him often in an 8 position now, Declan Rice, but he's pushing on and stuff. So I do think the structure and just having that ability to almost time it right, and when you're putting these players in, it's in the right moment and stuff. And listen, you can get some of this wrong because sometimes you just go into an environment where actually it just isn't the perfect fit. But that Jorginho point there, I did really notice that there was certain games where he got exposed, but Arteta was clever and he took him out, put him back in, and he created a structure that got the best out of him, and that's one of the challenges for Slot.
Okay, it's been excellent. Thank you very much for listening to the Anfield Wrap. We had both post-match pints and the pink out yesterday for free. If you haven't had time to check them out, do so as well. We obviously had the Klopp interview as well. Do check that out. Really, really pleased and proud to have done it. Mostly pleased and proud that the manager has gone in a certain direction. I talked about it at our live show on Saturday night, and if you were there, thank you very much indeed for coming and being part of what was a really enjoyable evening. Really, really good to have got to do that. But the most important thing is always what happens next. It kills me to admit it, but Rob Gutmann's right. That's the Anfield Wrap.